Radha Madhav, Radha Madhav, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Radha, Gopinatha Radha, Gopinatha Radhe, Jaya Radha, Gopinatha Radha, Gopinatha Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe, O Radhe, 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 Radhe. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Jai Shishi Guru Garangan Habik Giridhari, Radha Gopinath Ju Ki Jai, Satchinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Anantagota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Om Agina Timirandasya Gyanam Jala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantamana Petyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tammayatayo Tarvo Benidustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayatudiraye. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nityalila, Pravishna Om Asto Tarasarashishi Machila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nityalila Pravishna Om Asto Tarasarashishi Machila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all the assembled Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So, we've almost completed this Kapil Devahuti Samvada, and just very briefly to reiterate the arrangement of these chapters. So there are 9 chapters beginning from chapter 25, running through till chapter 33. So in that chapter 25 to 29, That's 5 chapters. It's described about different aspects of devotional service. There are 2 chapters, particularly chapter 25 and chapter 28, which are directly about devotional service. And the other chapters are describing how Gyan Mishra Bhakti is there and Astanga Yoga. So all these different aspects of bhakti. And then the last 3 chapters, or the last 4 chapters in this Samvad, are divided into chapter 30 is the activities that the problematic obstacles that beset the jiva in this world. And then chapter 31 is the situation within the womb of the mother, and how that is also greatly obstructing to the jiva. This is about when he comes back to this world. And then chapter 32 is that person who performs many pious activities with the hope of elevating himself to Swarga. So these 3 different realities of the world. After this description of devotional service, now this is actually the situation in this world of those Nitya Bada Jivas. And then the final chapter is a very beautiful description of when Kapila Dev leaves the ashram and his mother Devahuti, she attains the planet called Kapila Loka in Vaikuntha. That's what Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada describes. That's her destination. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that state of consciousness in comparison to Brahma Gyan and Paramatma realization. He describes it very detailed. Where is her actual destination, where she actually goes to? But I'll read that when we come to it. So we're just going to finish now this chapter 29. I hope I've managed to convey something of the flow of these chapters, so it's not just a blur of different teachings about bhakti. So it's been more defined. We've been very, very quickly going through. You know, in some places we've lingered a little bit longer, but for the most part it's gone very briefly. And the idea was just to give us an overview, more than anything, of this. So now I'm going to finish reading briefly this chapter 29. We didn't quite finish that yesterday. And then we'll begin this chapter 30. So Kapila Dev is continuing to speak to his mother about the different types of devotional service in Tamagun, Rajagun and Sattvagun. Now he's saying, therefore, though charitable gifts and attention, as well as through friendly behavior and by viewing all to be alike, one should propitiate me, who abide in all creatures as their very self. So I'm mentioning that many times in these chapters, Kapila Dev has referenced that the Supersoul is present within all bodies. And yesterday we discussed that at some length, how the necessity to have respectful vision towards all jiva souls to progress properly in bhakti. Otherwise, offenses will be committed which will just block our concentration, will block our thoughts of devotion to the Lord. Now he's going to give a step-by-step gradation of the different types of entities. He's starting off with animals with developed consciousnesses are better than those, and still better than those are those who have developed sense perception. So he's going through the different types of living entities now. It's very, very detailed. These whole chapters are very, very detailed. But just by briefly going over them, perhaps we can remember in the future, if I want to go into that particular detail more closely, where exactly to look. It should also give us great faith in the authoritative mood of the scriptures, how much knowledge is actually there, covering every aspect of existence. It's there entirely. So then he goes through the different types of beings, and then he comes to the human being, and then he says that more than that is the intelligent men, and more than that are the brahmanas who have understood the Vedas, and then more than that, he cannot find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mind, with a capital N, Krishna, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything, unto me without cessation. So it's very encouraging for us to review how we've progressed since we first came to devotional service, and how now perhaps so much of our time, thoughts and focus are only about getting Krishna's mercy, getting Guru's mercy, how to actually proceed in bhakti. We don't have anything else in our minds now. It's only this goal, and all of our activities are centered around that. We're not going here and there. There's no need to go here and there. We've understood so much of this. So our focus has become refined, and it should be encouraging for us to remember how we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when we had other sorts of desires. What is our desire now? We've become, like we said the other day, like desperate to actually achieve this gopi prem. Such a perfect devotee offers respects to every living entity because he is under the firm conviction that the Supreme Lord has entered the body of every living entity as the supersoul or controller. One time I asked Gurudev, I said, how come Kala Krishnadas was able to be kidnapped by those gypsies when he was actually with the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And then he looked at me and said, well, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is with you now in your heart, and how much deviated have you gone away from him? Krishna's there in the heart. It's not that Kala Krishnadas was just exclusively with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is what he was saying. He was saying that actually Krishna is there all the time in the heart, and yet we're still managing to deviate, moment by moment. And this instruction, which is so much repeated, of having respect for all living entities, because this is the opposite of envy. The nature of the material world is enviousness. So the opposite of that, or the antidote to purify that, is to engender respect for living entities, because the Supersoul, Krishna, is residing there, for one, and also to honor especially those people who have taken shelter of the holy name. Because I know in my case, I'm always breaking that, and that's like a hindrance to rapid progress. My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Now he's saying the time factor, because Devahuti has asked about the time factor, which causes the transformations of the various material manifestations. Nothing can transform without time. Transformation means to change, right? So it can't change without the time factor. So if the time factor is not there, there's no change. It's changeless. How can anything change if there's no time? So this, the symptom of time is that it's changing. It's going through different manifestations. And this is another feature of the Supreme Lord. So Kapila Dev is elaborating, he's bringing Krishna into the purview of her vision very closely to see this deterioration of everything around us, including our bodies, our mind, our senses, just objects, etc. I think especially if you live in India, everything seems to be breaking down, you know, they're building everywhere, and just knocking stuff, you know, it's like that. So this is the time factor.
This is Krishna himself. Anyone who does not know that time is the same as the Supreme Lord is afraid of the time factor. So think of a non-devotee that you know. He's afraid because of so many things that he thinks time is going to take away from him. His body, ultimately. There's a great fear. But knowing that this time factor is Krishna himself, then what is the fear? We can't, fight it or anything. That's the way it is. So therefore that fear of time can dissipate. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, who is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, is the time factor and the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone, and he causes every being to be annihilated by another. No one is dear to the Supreme Lord, nor is anyone his enemy or friend, but he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him, and destroys those who have. So this is a clear understanding of the Lord's vision, the Lord's equal vision to all living entities. That he's no one's friend and he's no one's enemy. He's impartial, but he is partial to those who actually turn towards him. It's like if a father has many sons, he loves them all, but he loves that son the most who is most respectful and most serving to him, naturally. So similarly like this. These are very interesting verses just coming up now, and it's almost a repeat of what went previously. Kapila Dev is saying that out of fear of the Supreme Lord, the wind blows. Out of fear of him, the sun shines. In other words, that Krishna is supreme in every single sense. We've just talked about the time factor. No one can avoid the time factor. Rock solid. Krishna's energy, the time factor. Now, Surya Dev, the planet itself, Vayu Dev, they're all servants of Krishna. They're not the supreme worshipable object. We chant that verse, Yak Chakshu Esha Savita Sakalagrahanam, Rajas Samasta Suramurtiya Sheshateja, Yas Yagyamat Samata Sampratikala Chakra, Govindam Adi Purushamtama. We worship that Supreme Lord who's brilliant in power, but we worship him who is mounting the wheel of time, that person, Sri Govinda, who supports Surya Dev, from where Surya Dev is getting his illumination. Then he's saying, out of fear of him the sun shines, out of fear of him rain pours forth showers, and out of fear of him the host of heavenly bodies shed their luster. Now, if we look back in chapter 25, he's saying practically the same thing. He's saying at the end of chapter 25, he's saying, it is because of my supremacy that the wind blows. Out of fear of me, the sun shines out of fear of me, and the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. Fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me. He's almost repeating exactly the same verse, so it must be very prominent that we, need to appreciate this. How is this energy working around us? So he's saying it twice. And then he carries on at the end of this chapter, making it more emphatic. He's saying, out of fear of the Supreme Lord, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. We can interpret the word fear to duty. If you have duty to perform, there's some sense of fear rolled amongst it. Isn't there? Or not? Can you think of an example of duty? When there's no, just the word duty means it's some imposition, you have to do something. So when there's that pushing, then there can be some fear along with it. Obligation, yes, obligation, duty. And here it's been referred to directly as fear. It's taking away the sugar, it's saying just directly, fear. Out of fear of the Supreme Lord, the rivers flow. The ocean never overflows. Out of fear of him only does fire burn, And does the earth with its mountains not sink in the water of the universe? Subject to the control of the Lord, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets which hold innumerable living entities. The total universal body expands with its 7 coverings under his supreme control. We have to appreciate this extreme Aishwarya presentation. If we don't have total submission, he started off by saying about time. You can't avoid time, but now taking it even further to our surroundings completely, how all these personalities are under the control of the Supreme Lord. If we become submissive to this, it's the last verse in Bhagavad Gita. It's the verse of, what's that? Sarvadhamma pratyaja mamikam saranam praja aham tam sarvipavivya mokshayishyami masucha. That's surrender everything, abandon all variety of religion and just surrender unto me. So this is the same similar sort of, this will be the conclusion of hearing this. I cannot move. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. I will submit to him. But when we are under the guidance of a more rasik teacher, we don't have that same fear. It's been transferred to an ecstatic mood of loving service. It's actually the dynamic shifts. These verses are spoken to his mother. They're spoken about the aspirant on the path of Astanga Yoga and Jnana Yoga. We are actually on a path, by Gurudev's mercy, of this Raganuga Bhakti. We are in this world practicing and showing Vaidhi Marg, but internally we are aspiring for this Raganuga Bhakti. This is our heart. So this is filled with sweetness and juice. It's not prompted by fear. Whereas here, this is for the Vaidhi Bhaktas. Everything is actually like this supreme controller, exhibiting some type of fear over the jiva, which will prompt him to act correctly. What does a teacher do when they sit in the classroom? They have the stick beside them, and the kids are just sitting there right up on, at the edge, because they know if they deviate, they're going to get a slap. So it helps them. How else can a mother train a child? Unless there's some fear involved. But when that fear becomes purified by the quality of love, then the whole dynamic shifts. Then it becomes something else altogether, which is the quality of Raganuga Bhakti. Then something else kicks in. The eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. It is the representative of the Supreme Lord. It comes with the jiva when the impregnation of pradhan, that's when kala manifests from the spiritual world. In the spiritual world there's no kala, no time. And then it comes with the jiva. These 2 ingredients together are impregnated into the pradhan. It becomes the prakriti. And then from that prakriti, all this material creation manifests. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another. He's talking about the creation and destruction, creation and destruction, creation and destruction, all monitored by the time factor. So here's an appreciation of Krishna's energy regarding the time factor. And we should understand this even in our own local situation. If we have difficulties and problems in our various devotional practices, we can be assured that in time they will pass. I can remember one time when I was looking after a temple in Australia, and there were so many problems always coming up, and I kept a diary. And I'd look back 5 days, and what was that problem I was so worked up about? It's 5 days ago, gone, finished. This is the time factor. Appreciate the time factor. So don't get yourself all in a twist in some particular big problem, because we know in 3 or 4 days' time, it will just be dissolved again. There's no need to sort of, project that it's going to be hellfire and brimstone, the next, 10, 15. It's not. It's maybe just a momentary upset. And it will, tattenu kampam susamikshmana. We learn this very clearly. So this is to help us navigate through this world as sadhaks. This knowledge is here. It's so conclusive, what he's giving. This appreciation of the time factor, the eternal time factor. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another, and likewise it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. In other words, there's no release for anyone in this material world, not even Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. So now, this is the end of his positive instructions, we can say, these 5 chapters. Now we're starting to describe the nature of adverse, fruitive activities. So I'll just read parts of this chapter, because I want to complete this whole dialogue today. So this is now chapter 30, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's explaining, because at the beginning of each chapter he explains the previous ones in summary and exactly what they are about. So he's saying here in his commentary to the first verse of the 30th chapter, Kapila has shown to his mother in 5 chapters bhakti mixed with the gunas, pure bhakti, as well as Gyan and Astanga Yoga in Sattva Gun. That's a summary of 5 chapters right there. Bang, 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 bang. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is so kind because he gives us this insight into how to break it down so that we can understand it more easily. There's a sequence to it. In 3 chapters, he now shows, one after the other, results arriving from activities in Tamagun, Rajagun, and Sattvagun. This is what we're just about to hear in 3 chapters. So therefore we can keep that overview in mind when we're hearing the topics. In the 30th chapter, Kapila explains the pains of youth, old age, death, and hell of persons agitated by attachment to wife and sons. So basically that's the whole 30th chapter, he's just said right there in one sentence. That's the whole 30th. But I'm going to read some of it just to make a continued impression on our consciousnesses of our present situation, and how dangerous it can be if we choose at any moment to deviate what is our destination. So again, this fear mood is actually coming through from his instructions. He's saying that as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. If you look at people, sometimes, they're just running around, really trying to enjoy things, and you just want to grab them and say, don't you know this is all temporary? Why are you wasting such valuable time in such a stupid, frivolous engagement? It's going to all, be dissolved. What is the value of this activity? And most people in the world are racing futilely after to try and catch some resources so that they can enjoy something more. I mean, as Kali Yuga increases, it just becomes more. I can remember when I stay in England now in some houses, it's like, the roadways are jam-packed at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Everyone is just racing off to work at 5 or 6 in the morning. There's not even any quiet time then. It's tragic. The devotee, his heart melts in compassion towards the misguided souls who have no idea what they are doing, why they are doing it. No idea at all. Just chasing their tails like in a circle. They have no idea. Whatever is produced by the materialist with great pain and labor for so-called happiness, the Supreme Lord, as the time factor, destroys. And for this reason, the conditioned soul laments. That's a beautiful comment. The translation says everything, just in one sentence. We work so hard to achieve some happiness, and then as the time factor, Krishna just wipes it out, and then we lament. And it happens again and again and again and again. When is the conditioned soul going to learn? So the devotee should learn how to expertly explain these truths to the conditioned souls. The misguided materialist does not know that his very body is impermanent, and that the attraction of home, land, and wealth, which are in relation to that body, are also temporary. Out of ignorance only, he thinks that everything is permanent. I mean, they get so wound up about what they do and the sense of importance, on the global level. This country against this country, and this one wanting that, this one wanting that, and this one, it's just, when you see it from this platform, it's so unfortunate. But we see the reality of the teachings of the Bhagavatam in that circumstance. When you look at that picture, you can see what's actually happening. The living entity, in whatever species of life he appears, finds a particular type of satisfaction in that species, and is never averse to being situated in such a condition. Like a pig who eats stool. He loves it. He doesn't want any other body. He's completely conditioned to accept and adore that body. And we also, in these bodies, are the same. It's easy to look on a pig's body and say, well, why are you trying to enjoy in a pig's body? But what about in a conditioned human body? The human body is most valuable, of course, because we can purify it and make our connection with Krishna. But if a human body is only acting in a conditioned state, then that's a great tragedy and a great waste of the human birth. So I said at the beginning that these 3 chapters, they're the sort of minus parts of the devotional practice, but we should hear something. The conditioned living entity is satisfied in his own particular species of life, while deluded by the covering influence of the illusory energy. He feels little inclined to cast off his body. Even when in hell, he takes delight in hellish enjoyments. Kapil Devahuti is showing the nature of the conditioned consciousness. Previously he's shown how to purify our consciousness. Now he's showing what is that consciousness that we are endeavoring to purify. Although he is always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so-called family and society. So then it goes on for so many verses where we've heard for so many years the jiva's suffering condition. And we remember many of the beautiful songs of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's lamenting in this way. He's taking exactly the same words and making beautiful bhajans out of them and presenting them to us. And we sing what's that? Amare Jivan, this beautiful bhajan, that I've wasted all my life. Now he's continuing saying, thus the unfortunate man, unsuccessful in maintaining his family members, is bereft of all beauty. He always thinks of his failure, grieving very deeply. Seeing him unable to support them, his wife and others do not treat him with the same respect as before, even as miserly farmers do not accord the same treatment for their old and worn-out oxen. And then he goes through in this mode. In this way, he comes under the clutches of death and lies down, surrounded by lamenting friends and relatives. And although he wants to speak with them, he no longer can, because he is under the control of time. Again, this is the situation. At death, he sees the messengers of the Lord of Death come before him, their eyes full of wrath, and in great fear he passes stool and urine. As a criminal is arrested for punishment by the constables of the state, a person engaged in criminal sense gratification is similarly arrested by the Yamadutas, who bind him by the neck with strong rope and cover his subtle body so that he may undergo severe punishment. Then is described how they drag him to hell, which is a passageway of 99,000 yojans. But it's only within 2 or 3 moments that he reaches that place. And then he is at once dragged to undergo torturous punishment that he's destined to due to his karma. He's placed in the midst of burning pieces of wood, and his limbs are set on fire. In some cases he has to eat his own flesh, or have it eaten by others. His entrails are pulled out by the hounds and vultures of hell, even though he is still alive to see it. This is like Umadidi was describing the other night about having to embrace this figure of a boiling hot effigy of a man or a woman if we're attached to lusty activities, and is subjected to torment by serpents, scorpions, gnats, and other creatures that bite him. Next, his limbs are lopped off and torn asunder by elephants. He is hurled down from the hilltops and also held captive either in water or in a cave. So, Kapila Dev is showing what happens if we don't practice bhakti very clearly. That actually there is a supreme controller and he does love us sufficiently to chastise us. Just like a loving mother, if a child tries to put his hand in the fire, what does the mother do? She takes the hand and she pushes it in the fire so the child will feel that heat and never want to do it again. In a sense, she's punishing the child. So we also have to be, we can become punished by just hearing about this. An intelligent person will hear this and develop a healthy sense of respect and fear for any engagement outside of pure devotional service. Because it's only that one focus that's going to get us out of this samsara. Gradually, we're becoming more and more intensely focused. That's been our process through the chanting, through hearing, through Gurudev's mercy, through all of our sevas. It's intensifying our focus of attention. Men and women whose lives were built upon indulgence of illicit sex, life are put into many kinds of miserable conditions in the hells known as Tamasira, Under Tamasira, and Raurava. Kapila continued, "My dear mother, it is sometimes said that we experience hell or heaven on this planet, for hellish punishments are sometimes visible on this planet also." So perhaps some of us can relate to that. Maybe we felt at different times in our lives that we've lived through some torturous difficulty. And of course, what is the reason for all this is our original turning away from Krishna. This is why Krishna, Kapila Dev, made this very strong point that the wind is blowing out of fear of him, that the sun is shining out of fear of him, that Krishna is the supreme controller, and yet we try to turn away. We can't avoid him. After leaving this body, the man who maintained himself and his family members by sinful activities suffers a hellish life, and his relatives suffer also. He goes alone to the darkest regions of hell after quitting the present body, and the money he acquired by envying other living entities is the passage money with which he leaves this world. Thus the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, the maintainer of kinsmen, is put into a hellish condition to suffer for his sinful activities, like a man who has lost his wealth. Having gone through all the miserable hellish conditions and having passed in a regular order through the lowest forms of animal life prior to human birth, and having thus been purged of his sins, one is reborn again as a human being on this earth. So there's the whole spectrum. You know, for that sinful person who's engaged in sinful activities, this is a result. He goes through that hellish existence, and then he travels up through the species of life, and then finally he takes birth again in a human womb. And now this is the 31st chapter. This is a continuation. Now what happens when that living entity is born into that womb? So I'll just again read the overview by Kapila Dev. In the 31st chapter, which is where we reach now, the pains in the womb at birth, as an infant and as a child, as well as bhakti of the jiva as it speaks while in the womb, are explained. So this is one of the most beautiful parts of this chapter, is the jiva inside the womb praying desperately for relief with a mood of honoring Krishna. This comes in this chapter. So now the jiva again takes birth in the human species. Under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the result of his work, his karma, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through a particle of male semen and assume a particular type of body. Now it's going to go through a very graphic description of the child manifesting in the womb, which is amazing to appreciate. One time I was in Wales and I was with this mother who was giving classes on prenatal instruction to all these women. Madan Mohan's mother-in-law. And I started to, she was saying, one of those mothers said, oh, is it very painful for the child during birth and so on? And she just sat, this mother just made up this whole story about, no, the child's in complete bliss. It's totally happy. It's in the womb and it's with its mother and it's completely, it's just like she made this like cotton wool story up. And I just became more and more disturbed listening to this stupid story. So actually in our Bhagavatam, it's describing like this, that it's a hellish existence in a pool of blood. You're all scrunched up, you can't even straighten out. You're subject to any types of foods that the mother eats, so many like discomforts. And she looked at me and she just said, well, that's what you believe. It was really hard, you know, when you realize that someone just doesn't go there. And they just, like an atheist, you know, they just don't have any sort of faith in anything outside of their own illusion. This is the power of Maya, you know, that the atheist doesn't, you know, accept this. On the first night, the sperm and ova mix, and on the fifth night, the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th night, it develops into a form like a plum, and after that, it gradually turns into a lump of flesh, or an egg, as the case may be. In the course of a month, a head is formed, and at the end of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body, hair, bones, skin appear, as do the organ of generation and other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. After 4 months, from the date of conception, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely chyle, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt. And at the end of 6 months, the fetus, enclosed by the amnion, begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. I mean, when I first read this, when I'm reading it now, I have absolutely no doubt that this is exactly how the situation is. It can't, anyway, it's encouraging to see it's described so graphically. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abominable residence of stools and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the child suffers terrible agony because of his tenderness, and thus becomes unconscious moment after moment because of the terrible condition. Owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs, or food which is too salty or too sour, the body of the child incessantly suffers pains which are almost intolerable. Placed within the amnion and covered outside by the intestines, the child remains lying on his side of the abdomen, his head turned toward the belly, and his back and neck arched like a bow. The child thus remains like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, remember this, it's if the child is fortunate. Many times I've heard devotees quote this, oh, all children in the womb pray. No, it's not at all like that. If the child is fortunate, then it will pray, like these beautiful prayers that are about to come. If the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births. And he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Thus endowed with the development of consciousness, from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy, abominable cavity, he cannot remain in one place. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord, who has put him in that condition. Now there's 10 verses of these pitiful prayers of the jiva within the womb, the child within the womb. So I'm going to read some of those. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only, because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. So now you can explain to me, how does the child know about Krishna? How does he know? We've just heard in the previous chapter him going through hell. Jiva Goswami describes that the jiva inherently knows that there is a Supreme Lord. It's his nature to know. It's part of the soul's innate consciousness is to know that there is a Supreme Lord. It's already set. So that's the reason why he takes shelter. It's like, I can remember once I was on a plane and we just dropped like 7 or 8 seconds through some air pocket. And everyone had just been drinking on and yakking. And suddenly we just boom like that, and practically everyone on the plane started to pray. Just immediately. Oh God, oh God, oh God, Jesus Christ, Allah, something. Everyone. You can see that where were they immediately, impulsively taking shelter? They were taking shelter of God. So that proves the innate connection with the Lord. It's not something that has to be sort of brought. We have to remember it, but it's there by nature. It's our nature, because we are Vivinamsa, we are born from that Supreme Lord. It's there, we understand that. Now the jiva is saying, I, the pure soul, appearing now bound by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him, who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances. So this has many times been quoted as the cure for any type of aparad or any type of offense that we make. In any way is this mood of akshepa, regret. If I have no remorse, no regret for my previous turning away from Krishna, if I think, oh, I'm fine, I haven't done anything wrong, if I'm thinking like this, will create an arrogance which will separate me from contact with the Lord. But if I'm feeling, genuinely regretful and remorseful about the billions of years that I turned away from Krishna and have disrespected so many of his devotees and have disrespected his holy, if I'm feeling that, actually, that is the antidote. Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharati Maharaj was saying this about one devotee who had had a fall down, a sannyasi. And he said, if he is not regretting, he cannot be cured. Without this regret, you cannot purify. That's the process to purification, is to lament regret. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written so many songs like this. I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my having being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused, although I am essentially spiritual. Because the Supreme Lord is transcendental to material nature and the living entities, because he is devoid of such a material body, and because he is always glorious in his spiritual qualities, I offer my obeisances unto him. So he's lamenting the situation that he has fallen, but glorifying the position of Krishna, who is completely spiritual in all of his activities. The human soul further prays, the living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues a hard struggle for existence on the path of repeated birth and death. This conditioned life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord? So through these prayers we should understand the situation. The child is praying very pitifully, but then what's about to happen? By the movements of the wind in the stomach of the mother, he's going to be forced out, and actually the extreme pain of a large body coming through a very tiny opening, he comes out like completely bewildered. And unless the people who are catching him when he comes out are devotees and can relate to him as a spirit soul, he's going to be immediately overlaid with so many material considerations, like that he's the body. Everything will be pampering to the body. So again, he will forget this state of consciousness in the womb. Which is why, an interesting thing, that sometimes with extreme pain in this world or suffering, we automatically turn to God. It's like if you have a friend and they've just lost their mother or their father or their husband or wife or something, it's usually the best time to speak to them about God. It's usually the time of that intense suffering where they're actually remembering God. It's not that we have to suffer to remember God necessarily, but it's often a great impetus. It's like at the time of death itself, when the soul is being pulled out of the body, then that's a time when most people are saying some type of a prayer. But if it's not a prayer in knowledge, where is it going to bring any relief? Then this jiva is saying, "Oh my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement? My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness, although I am only 10 months old. There is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands." So it goes on for a few more verses here. But this is chapter 31 in the 3rd canto, so we can read ourselves at different times. It's very helpful if you meet one mother who's about to give birth. Many times I've told them to read this verse just to appreciate the nature of the child in the womb. What is the situation? Lord Kapila continued, "The 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb, but while he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition propels him forth, and his face turned downwards, so that he may be born. Pushed downwards all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless and deprived of memory, due to severe agony. The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and plays like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. After coming out of the abdomen, the child is given to the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus he is nursed by such persons, unable to refuse. Whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Almost immediately we are being covered over by people who are controlling us, who are not appreciative of our spiritual position. So this is the heavy weight of Maya immediately covering us over. This is like, the cause of our present sickness. We've come through like this. So now it's describing the choices that the living entity gets because he's of Tatashta Shakti. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. So this is the great lamentable situation. This is samsara. It's a really tight, tough circle. And it's so graphically described. Yeah. Yeah. He wanted us to wake up and be very cautious and serious. If we make one slip, if there's some desires left in our heart at the time of death for some type of animalistic behavior, then Krishna is so compassionate. He wants to fulfill that desire. If you have that desire, you must fulfill it. He will give us that opportunity again to come. I mean, how many monkeys are in Braj these days? There's something like 2 lakh monkeys in Govardhan, and they produce 7 times faster than human beings. So if you think in a few years' time, in any way you go, there's just monkeys. Where they were coming from? I often think, maybe people in Kali Yuga, they're not following practices correctly, and they've taken birth. I mean, look at the monkey, how hellish his life is. You know, in winter they don't practically freeze, and they're diseased, and they're so horrible. You know, in summer they just bake. It's like there's no release at all in a monkey's body. And who knows, like Tungaviti is saying, unless we actually really, you know, get very much away from this illusory energy, then we've no. Prabhupada used to say, you Westerners don't appreciate how strong Maya Devi is. You think you could just flirt with her. Oh, I'm just going back to the West for a few weeks, sit with Mom, you know, nice cup of tea, a few chocolate biscuits and stuff, put some telly on. We don't know where that might drift. We don't know where that might go. We don't know if we suddenly die in that condition. What will be our destination? One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman, for such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. The woman created by the Lord is the representative of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just as a blind well covered by grass. So this attraction is men for women and women for men, of course. The living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. A woman therefore should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is the death for the deer. In other words, develop this detachment. Due to his particular type of body, the materialistic living entity wanders from one planet to another, following fruitive activities. In this way, he involves himself in fruitive activities and enjoys the result incessantly. In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses according to his fruitive activities. When the reaction of his particular activity comes to an end, that end is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. When we read these descriptions like this, we can put birth and death as being like separate from us. It's just pertaining to the body. The body is dying and the body is being born. I am not being born. I am eternal. It's to push us into the reality of our consciousness. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus one can be unconcerned with the material world. All this description is for one purpose, which is described here in the last verse of this chapter, to develop detachment from this world and body, family, wealth, situation, and everything. It doesn't mean you physically have to do anything about that externally. It means internally. You're cultivating this mood of a pessimistic mood towards the material world. It's not that important. And actually, as we get older, it should hopefully become less and less important. Therefore, we will have less and less concerns about our material situation. It'll mean less to us. Whether I've got a nice place or not a nice place, I have this or I have... It'll start to mean less and less automatically. It just won't matter so much. But it's an internal thing. Don't ever try to sort of like make it imitation external. Now I'll just live in a thatched hut on the side of the Jamuna and just have no nothing, because probably what will happen, he's just going mad. You know, if you try to imitate, huh? Yeah, so winter's hellish too. So now we come to this chapter 32, and I just want to describe from here. So I'm going quickly along. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is describing this next. So, we've seen what happens to the illusion jiva, how he goes ultimately into a hellish world and then goes through the lower life forms and eventually takes a human birth. And then it's to describe what happens in that human birth, how again he can become covered, like Tungavidya is saying, you know, we have to be cautious that again we can become covered. And now this chapter 32. In the 32nd chapter, after speaking about returning to the world by Sakarm Karma Yoga and not returning to the world by Nishkarm Karma Yoga. So these two considerations are running through this chapter. If Sakam, Sa, that prefix means you want something for your activities. Who's the Sakam Bhakta? It's Dhruva Maharaj. He wanted a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather. Sakam Karma Yoga. So if somebody wants something, the results were written here in this 31st chapter. And if it's Nishkam, if I don't want anything in this world, if I've learned detachment from this world, then my options are very successful. So now it's defining it further. It's giving such a graphic picture of our situation. Kapila Dev is so merciful. And not returning to the world by Nishkarm Karma, Kapila criticizes those who are not devotees. Now in this next chapter, I'll read some of these translations about the entanglement in fruitive activities. This is like the Smarta Brahmana. We see many times around us in Braj, you know, this worship of the Devas exclusively. They're not focusing always on the Supreme Lord in Goloka Vrindavan. Bewildered by desire, the jiva, he rejects worship of the Lord and instead very faithfully worships devatas by sacrifice. Overtaken by such faith, dedicated to pitris and devatas, a person goes to the moon planet, drinks soma beverage, and then falls back to earth. Intelligent people who do not desire the results of their prescribed actions for artha and karma, having offered all results to the Lord, being free from attachment, are peaceful and pure in consciousness. So they are the ones, the intelligent people, who are not pursuing their material desires to become fulfilled. Engrossed in actions of detachment, with no sense of possessiveness or ego, with consciousness purified completely, having attained sattva by performance of prescribed duties, going to the path of the sun, they attain the perfect Lord, the controller of higher and lower beings, who is the material and efficient cause of the universe. They remain on Satyaloka, meditating on Brahma until the end of Brahma's life, of 2 praharas. Desiring to give up his body, covered by earth, water, fire, air, and ether, mind, senses, sense objects, and ahankar, knowing the length of his life, Brahma, composed of 3 gunas, enters into Mahavishnu. So now we're getting the whole picture. We're getting actually what happens to that person who hasn't connected with either Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan, but is just looking for the Brahman or Paramatma feature. Paramatma, remember, is temporary also. Where is Paramatma when this material world is annihilated? He's back in the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is back in the body of Mahavishnu. So Paramatma feature himself is not permanent. Actually, I'll read from Prabhupada, so easier to... What was it? 9. I'm just going to go very briefly through this chapter, because I want to talk about the last chapter of it. Therefore, Kapila is saying Therefore, my dear mother, by devotional service, take direct shelter of the Supreme Lord, who is seated in everyone's heart. So he's enumerating the dangers of becoming deviated from focus, attention on the Lord. Because we see that in some instances, there are some types of results manifesting from worship of Durga Ma. There must be, otherwise people would not worship these devas. You know, they get that, they go to some place right up in the Jamuna, and they worship Lakshmi Dev. Most businessmen, they do this once in their lives, you know. They do some yajna, and their faith is made strong because sometimes they'll see any sort of result as being the result of their worship of Durga Ma. So it gives them some shraddha, but it doesn't take them to any higher place of devotion. Now it's again talking about those who are too addicted to this material world, and they execute prescribed duties very nicely and with great faith. They daily perform all such prescribed duties with attachment to the fruitive result. Again, this is Sakarma Karma Yoga. These are the personalities who only are worshipping the devas. And probably most people we see in Vrindavan, most of the shopwallahs and people, this is actually the worship that they're performing. Gurudev said one time there was millions of people doing Govardhan Parikrama, and someone asked him, "Oh, Gurudev, are all these people performing bhakti?" And Gurudev said, "Practically none of them." Bhakti is very high, so from all these chapters, we've got to appreciate, like I said previously, sometimes we live in a sort of bubble of our own association, that everyone seems to be talking about bhakti. But outside of that bubble, they're not talking about bhakti. They're talking about their sons getting married, and will they have, you know, nice future, and this and that. And this is the principal focus. Karma Yoga. You know, why do so many millions of people worship someone like Sai Baba, for example? All over India. Because he attends to people's karma. He's nourishing their karmic desires. It has nothing to do with Shuddha Bhakti. So we must know what is Shuddha Bhakti, authoritatively. Such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitriloka by the southern course of the sun, but they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruitive activities from birth to the end of life. So this chapter runs through like this. Now he's saying, let me just go through here. Sorry? Well, this is perhaps because the devotees aren't vigorously demonstrating their devotion sufficiently. Mahaprabhu is giving us some, you know, greater opportunities to actually, you know, I mean, what are we doing as devotees on the planet to offset these? I mean, half the time we're just scrapping and fighting with each other, a lot of energy is going there. You know, how much sort of concerted efforts, and we're printing books, we're doing like this, but how much more could we actually do with all this abundant energy that so many devotees have? How could we be centralized and actually, you know, utilize, like when Prabhupada was on the planet, there weren't so many devotees, but if a businessman was traveling around the world, for example, he'd see the devotees doing Harinam in New York, Harinam in Paris, he'd get to Rome, they'd be doing Harinam, and he'd be thinking, my God, these Hare Krishnas are all over the planet. But it's not quite the same now, the same sort of energy, and there's a lot stronger devotees actually, because they've realized a lot of these truths, but they're not manifesting the urgency to actually help in the world. You know, to collectively be directed. Like Vichitri is saying, you know, that Durga Puja is more popular than Radhastami in Vrindavan. Really? I didn't know that.
Reminds me of the final pastimes of Srimad Prabhupada when he called unite the Vaishnavas so that we can create a second way to behave with them.
Let's see.
You were mentioning how it's kind of pitiful.
Yeah.
Bubble,
Yeah.
all this infighting.
Yeah. But there's so much talent amongst us. Actually, there's brilliance amongst the devotees, but it doesn't seem to be sufficiently directed, to actually check the flow. Everyone is very individually cultivating their bhakti, but this collective effort can only be actually brought about by some personality, like Prabhupada, like Gurudev. If a personality actually manifests like these personalities and unites, irrevocably across the board, everyone realizes, yes, we just want to serve Krishna. Nothing else except this. But as it seems we get older, we get more, particular about who I'm with, etc. Listen, I want to get to this last chapter because it's very beautiful. So, Kapila Dev is saying finally to his mother that the instruction should be given to the faithful devotee who is respectful to the spiritual master, non-envious, friendly to all kinds of living entities, and eager to render service with faith and sincerity. So it's describing ultimately what is the mentality of the pure devotee. And he's saying at the end of this chapter, the last verse, anyone who once meditates upon me with faith and affection, who hears and chants about me, surely goes back home, back to Godhead. So that's the end of the 32nd chapter. Now this 33rd chapter is very, very beautiful. It's when Devahuti, she begins to glorify Lord Kapila Dev. She begins to acknowledge his gifts with great gratitude that he's actually purified her of this ignorance. It's very beautiful. Thus Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila, wife of Kardama Muni, became freed from all ignorance concerning devotional service and transcendental knowledge. She offered her obeisances unto the Lord, the author of the basic principles of the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is the background of liberation, and she satisfied him with the following verses of prayer. Devahuti said, Brahma is said to be unborn because he takes birth from the lotus flower which grows from your abdomen, while you lie in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. But even Brahma simply meditated upon you, whose body is the source of the unlimited universe. And then she continues, offering very, very beautiful prayers. And she says one very famous verse here. Just come to it. Said, my dear Lord, you have assumed the body in order to diminish the sinful activities of the fallen and to enrich their knowledge in devotion and liberation. Since these sinful people are dependent on your direction, by your own will you assume incarnations as a boar and other forms. Similarly, you have appeared in order to distribute transcendental knowledge to your dependents. To say nothing of the spiritual advancement of persons who see the Supreme Lord face to face, even a person born in a family of dog-eaters immediately becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if he once utters the holy name of the Lord, or chants about him, hears about his pastime, offers him obeisances, or even remembers him. So today you've all been very, 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 very patient. I appreciate deeply, it's not easy just listening to somebody read so much, but the words of the Bhagavatam are so powerful and so nectarian. If we can just hear them, it's very, advantageous. It creates such a good impression in the heart. If we just speak at random on these different things, it's also can be encouraging, but to actually hear directly the words themselves, gives us great regard and respect for this Bhagavatam, which is the whole purpose of me coming here and speaking at all, is just to try and inspire us all more to take shelter of this Bhagavatam. This Bhagavatam is our everything. Nam and Bhagavat, these two gifts of Krishna. This Bhagavat must never ever, not for a single day, be neglected. At least one verse should be there. Now this is the most famous verse. Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name, even if born in the families of dog-eaters. Such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your Lordship, they must have bathed in holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. This is the conclusion of this whole Samvad. This is the conclusion that Devahuti is glorifying Kapila Dev. She's just received all this, and now in her mood of gratitude, this is how she's feeling. She's feeling that those persons who are glorifying the Lord in any sort of way, even in the most fallen conditions, even coming from the barbaric Western countries, and we are glorifying, taking the name of the Lord, and we're hearing about the Lord's pastimes, and we're speaking about the Lord's pastimes. These are the most glorious people. This is what she's saying. This is what she's saying. I believe, my Lord, that you are Lord Vishnu himself, under the name of Kapila, and you are the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Brahman. The saints and sages, being freed from all the disturbances of the senses and mind, meditate upon you, for by your mercy only can one become free from the clutches of the three modes of material nature. This is where we started from. We started from this point that it's not Prakriti that's binding us, it's the three modes of material nature. At the time of dissolution, all the Vedas are sustained in you only. So now she's glorifying, and now Kapila Dev begins to speak. My dear mother, the path of self-realization which I've already instructed to you is very easy. You can execute this system without difficulty, and by following it you shall very soon be liberated, even within your present body. Why is it easy? Because we have Guru. If we didn't have Guru, it would not be easy. We would not know what was right, what was wrong. It's because of Gurudev's mercy, because of Guru, that this path is made smooth for us. If there was no Sadguru, this path would be most confusing, because there are so many, topics in the marketplace. There are so many different discussions going on. How would you know which one? One day this way, next day this way. You must take shelter of Guru strongly and listen how to take shelter of Guru. We've spoken in the last few days. Take shelter of his instructions directly. Read his instructions. Hear his instructions if we're not sure. Always look for what is Gurudev's instruction on this particular topic and hold solidly to this. Not left or right. My dear mother, those who are actually transcendentalists certainly follow my instructions, as I have given them to you. This is Krishna himself saying to his mother, the same thing I've just said. Follow his instructions. You may rest assured that if you traverse this path of self-realization perfectly, surely you shall be freed from fearful material contamination and shall immediately reach me. Mother, persons who are not conversant with this method of devotional service certainly cannot get out of the cycle of birth and death. Without knowledge, there is no way out. So now, Maitreya is saying that Kapila's mission has been fulfilled, and he's leaving his mother's ashram. And then there's beautiful verses how Devahuti, she begins to practice very, very strongly and in a focused condition these instructions that her divine son has given to her. And finally, she is leaving her body. She's performed serious engagement in devotional service. And because she was strong in renunciation, she accepted only the necessities of the body. It's describing her life as a dedicated sadhak. And then it's described that she leaves her body. I just want to read you this part about how... the palace where Devahuti achieved her perfection, my dear Vidura, is understood to be a most sacred spot. It is known all over the three worlds as Siddhapada. Dear Vidura, the material elements of her body have melted into water and are now a flowing river, which is the most sacred of all rivers. Anyone who bathes in that river also attains perfection, and therefore all persons who desire perfection go to bathe there. It's not saying the name of the river. 632. Oh, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also doesn't say what is the name of the river. Okay, so her body became a sacred river, so we have to research that. What is the river? And then it's describing how she leaves her body and she goes to the planet of Kapila Dev in Vaikuntha. This is what Prabhupada describes. You'll find it, I just read it this morning. Okay, I can't find the exact space. So it was described here in Prabhupada's commentaries that she achieves this Kapila Vaikuntha planet. That is her destination. There is also a Vaikuntha planet known as Kapila Vaikuntha, to which Devahuti was promoted to meet Kapila and reside there eternally, enjoying the company of her transcendental son. So that was the result of her practicing the instructions of Kapila Dev. And for us, we take these instructions wherever we can benefit from them on our path of Rag Marg. This is the path that Srila Gurudev has clearly presented to us, that path of Radha Dasyam. And we take strength from these instructions to follow that path more proficiently. So there are so many teachings for us to get from there. So I'll stop there. Thank you all so much for allowing me just to read all this. You know, it's really helpful for me anyway to actually scroll through all these chapters on this Samvad. It is a sacred Samvad, and to hear it regularly will give us more foundation to enter into the topics that we've been discussing in the evening. Like these topics in the evening, they gave us a very foundation from here. So, Kapila Devahuti Samvada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare